What if a shinobi from another world entered High School DxD, and the very concept of power collapsed? Naruto Uzumaki arrives with Chakra, an energy no devil, angel, or god understands. Before the factions can react, their systems begin to shatter. If you enjoyed dark what-if stories, hit like, subscribe, and let's begin. Chapter 1. The sky over Kuo wasn't just dark, it was hemorrhaging. A violent, jagged rift of violet and crimson tore through the fabric of the dimensional barrier, screaming with the sound of 1,000 dying stars. This wasn't a teleportation circle. It wasn't a devil's summoning. This was a cosmic violation. Deep within the rift, a silhouette hung suspended in a vortex of raw, unadulterated energy. Naruto Uzumaki wasn't the boy who wanted to be Hokage anymore. He was a relic of a war that had burned his world to a cinder, a man who had stared into the eye of a literal god and blinked second. His orange jumpsuit was gone, replaced by a tattered, floor-length black houri that drifted in the dimensional wind like a funeral shroud. His eyes, once the color of a summer sky, were now cold, calculating slits of burning gold, the sag. E-mode cross-fused with the jagged ripple of the Rinnegan. He felt the weight of this new world's logic, trying to crush him. It felt thin. It felt fragile. Is this it, Kurama? Naruto's voice was a low rasp, vibrating with a frequency that made the nearby skyscrapers of Kuo City groan. This is the place where they play at being legends. Inside his mindscape, a fortress of golden bars and boiling red chakra. A voice like grinding tectonic plates answered. It smells like stagnation, Naruto. It smells like blood and ego. These aren't gods. They're just parasites with fancy titles. Break them. Naruto let out a breath, and the air in a 5-mile radius ionized. He didn't descend, he fell like a meteor. Down in the old school building, Rias Gremory stood paralyzed. Her peerage, Issei, Akeno, Kiba, and Kaneko, were pinned to the floor by nothing but the atmospheric pressure of the intruder's approach. The power of destruction, usually a roiling sea of lethal energy within Rias's veins, felt like a stagnant puddle in the presence of the heat descending from the heavens. President, what is that? Issei gasped, the boosted gear on his arm pulsing a frantic, panicked crimson. D-Drag is screaming, he's telling me to run. The Red Dragon Emperor, the soul of a world-ending beast, was whimpering in the back of Issei's mind. Partner, get out. This isn't a devil. This isn't a god. It's an extinction event. Then, the impact. The courtyard of Kuo Academy didn't just explode, it ceased to exist. A shockwave of golden light vaporized the stone, the trees, and the reinforced concrete, leaving a crater 50 yards deep. In the center of the smoldering pit stood the blonde stranger. He wasn't even breathing hard. He looked up, his gaze piercing through the ceiling of the Occult Research Club building, locking onto Rias Gremory's eyes. You, Naruto said, his voice carrying the weight of a mountain. You're the one holding the leash in this town. Kiba was the first to move. His speed was legendary among mid-tier devils, a blur of silver and steel. He lunged with a holy demonic sword, a blade meant to sever the soul. Naruto didn't even turn his head. He simply raised a finger. The sword-birth blade hit Naruto's skin and shattered. Not snapped, shattered into a million microscopic glimmers of light. Kiba's eyes widened, his momentum carrying him forward into a vacuum of power he couldn't comprehend. Too slow, Naruto muttered. He didn't punch Kiba. He flicked him. The shockwave from a single finger flick sent the knight through 3 reinfo RCED walls and out the other side of the academy grounds. Kiba, Issei roared, the D-Drag scale armor manifesting in a burst of green light. I don't care who the hell you are. You don't come into our house and touch my friends. Issei charged, his fist glowing with the accumulated boost of his sacred gear. He was moving at speeds that should have liquefied a human's internal organs. To Naruto, he looked like he was wading through molasses. Sacred gear, Naruto mused, his hand reaching out to catch Issei's fist with the casual grace of a man catching a falling leaf. A soul trapped in a box. A pathetic way to store power. You're using the dragon's strength, kid, but you don't even know what strength is. Naruto's grip tightened. The scale mail armor, supposedly impenetrable, began to crack and flake away like dry mud. Issei screamed as the raw chakra of the 9 tails began to leak into the boosted gear, a predatory energy that started to consume the dragon's essence from the inside out. Let him go. Akeno's voice cracked like thunder. Lightning, pure, holy demonic bolts, descended from the sky, converging on Naruto's head. He didn't dodge. He opened his left hand, and a small, spinning orb of dark matter began to form. Create a path. The lightning didn't hit him, it was sucked into his palm, swirled into a vortex, and vanished into nothingness. Is that your best? Naruto asked, his eyes shifting to a deep, terrifying purple. Feeding me, I've eaten the energy of a moon. Your sparks are just appetizers. Rias stepped forward, her red hair billowing in the natural wind generated by Naruto's presence. She summoned a massive sphere of the power of destruction, the ultimate technique of the Gremory line. It was a ball of pure erasure, meant to delete anything it touched from existence. I am Rias Gremory, daughter of the House of Gremory, she cried, her voice trembling with a mix of fury and genuine terror. Identify yourself, or be erased. She launched the attack. The sphere of crimson annihilation screamed through the air, leaving a trail of void in its wake. Naruto didn't use a jutsu. He didn't use a shield. He walked toward the attack. When the power of destruction touched his chest, it didn't erase him. It curled around him, suppressed by the sheer density of his senjutsu-enhanced chakra. He walked through the unbeatable magic as if it were a light mist. He reached the center of the room, standing inches from Rias. The height difference was minimal, but he felt like a titan looking down at an ant. Names don't mean much where I come from, Naruto said, his voice dropping to a whisper that felt like a blade against her throat. But if you need a label to put in your reports to your kings and your gods, tell them this: the logic of your world is broken. I am the paradox. I am Naruto Uzumaki, and I'm looking for something that can actually put up a fight. Kaneko tried to intervene, her Nekomata strength surging as she threw a punch aimed at Naruto's kidneys. He moved his hip an inch, caught her wrist, and gently, almost tenderly, sat her down on the floor. The sheer authority in his movement was so absolute that she found herself unable to stand back up. It wasn't gravity, it was the realization that her body refused to fight someone this far beyond her. The three factions, Naruto said, looking around the room at the broken peerage. Angels, fallen, devils, you guys have been fighting a war for centuries over a handful of territories and some shiny trinkets. It's boring. It's small time. I watched my world die because one man wanted to dream. You guys, you're just fighting because you're told to. Suddenly, the air in the room grew cold. A silver circle appeared, and a man with long crimson hair and a coat that radiated an aura of absolute sovereignty stepped out. Sear's Lucifer, the Crimson Satan. I felt a disturbance, Sear's said, his eyes scanning the devastation. He saw his sister trembling. He saw the boosted gear shattered, and he saw the man in the black houri. You aren't from the underworld. You aren't from heaven. You aren't even from this dimension, are you? Naruto turned, a small, predatory smile tugging at the corner of his lips. Finally, a heavy hitter. You must be the Satan they talk about, Naruto said. You look cleaner than the ones I've met. Less horns, more ego. Sear's didn't hesitate. He knew instinctively that talking was a secondary option here. He unleashed a wave of power of destruction so concentrated it turned the very oxygen in the room to ash. It was a tide of black and red, a literal ocean of ending. Naruto's eyes flared. 6 paths, ultra big ball Rasenshuriken. In the palm of his hand, a massive shuriken of golden light, humming with the sound of a billion bees. Manifested. It wasn't just wind, it was the literal cutting edge of reality. When the two powers collided, the old school building didn't just collapse, it was atomized. The explosion was seen from space. A pillar of gold and red light pierced the clouds, clearing the weather for 300 miles. When the dust settled, Kuo Academy was a wasteland of glass and scorched earth. Sear's was standing, but his royal robes were shredded, and blood trickled from a cut on his cheek. He looked at his hand, it was shaking. He, the strongest devil in existence, had been pushed back by a physical shockwave. Naruto was standing 50 yards away, his houri barely singed. He held a small, black rod in his hand, a truth-seeking orb molded into a staff. Not bad, Red, Naruto said, spinning the staff. You actually made me use a hand. But here's the problem with your power. It's based on destruction. You try to delete things. But you can't delete something T has already surpassed the concept of death. Naruto tapped the ground with his staff. The earth rippled. I've died twice, Naruto said, his voice echoing through the ruins. I've had my soul ripped out and put back in. I've fought the mother of all chakra. Your little destruction, magic. It's just static to me. Now, Are we going to keep playing, or are you going to bring me someone who actually knows how to throw a punch? Searsx gritted his teeth, his aura flaring into a supernova of crimson light. Behind him, more circles began to appear. Seraphal Leviathan, Azazel, the leader of the fallen angels. Even Michael's presence began to shimmer in the sky above. The world's leaders were converging on a single point. Naruto looked up at the gathering gods and smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of a predator who had finally found a worthy hunting ground. Yeah, Naruto whispered, his chakra flaring until it formed the massive, translucent head of a nine-tailed fox behind him. Its eyes glowing with the same Rinnegan ripple as his own. This might actually be fun. The ground beneath him cracked as he began to power up. The sky didn't just turn dark, it began to whirl in a massive cyclone centered on his head. The power system of the DxD world, the ranking of low class to super devil, the tiers of sacred gears, the divine protections of heaven, it all started to buckle. It was like trying to fit the ocean into a teacup. Issei, Rias, get back, Searsx shouted, realizing the scale of what was coming. This isn't a battle, this is a world shift. Naruto slammed his palms together. Sage art. Wood release. True several thousand hands. The earth exploded. A wooden titan, larger than the city of Kuo itself, began to rise from the ground, its thousand arms reaching up to pluck the stars from the sky. The devils, the angels, and the fallen looked up in sheer, unadulterated horror. They had spent millennia worrying about Great Red and Ophis. They had been looking at the wrong monsters. Naruto stood on top of the titan's head, his arms crossed, his haori snapping in the gale force winds of his own making. He looked down at the gods of this world, and for the first time in their immortal lives, they felt small. Welcome to the new era, Naruto's voice boomed, drowning out the thunder. Hope you guys brought a change of clothes. It's about to get messy. The first hand of the titan descended, and the sound of it breaking the sound barrier was the only warning the three factions got before the world went white. End of Chapter 1. Chapter 2. The crater that used to be Kuo was no longer a geographical feature, it was a wound in reality. The true several thousand hands statue sat like a wooden god amidst the ruins, its thousand palms resting in a silent, terrifying prayer. High above, the air was thick with the scent of ozone and the golden, suffocating weight of Naruto's chakra. Searsx Lucifer stood on a floating platform of crimson energy, his face pale. Beside him, Azazel, the Governor-General of the Fallen Angels, was frantically scanning Naruto with a prototype device that was currently smoking and melting in his hand. Level. There is no level, Azazel spat, throwing the ruined machine into the abyss below. The energy coming off this guy isn't mana, it isn't light, and it isn't demonic power. It's biological nuclear fission. It's like he's a walking sun. It doesn't matter what he is, a cold, melodic voice interjected. Michael, the leader of heaven, descended in a flurry of 12 golden wings. His expression was uncharacteristically grim. The system is failing. The seventh heaven is experiencing tectonic shifts just because he's standing there. If we don't contain him, the barrier between our worlds will dissolve. Naruto, perched atop the head of the wooden titan, looked down at the Great Three. He looked bored. He had unzipped the top of his haori, revealing a chest crisscrossed with RS that shouldn't exist on a man with his healing factor, souvenirs from a war that had rewritten his soul. You guys talk a lot, Naruto shouted, his voice echoing through the dimensional gaps. Is his the council of gods I'm supposed to be afraid of? A guy with too many wings, a nerd with a broken toy, and a king who looks like he's about to faint. Come on, I've had harder fights with shadow clones. You dare mock the heavens? Michael's voice boomed, his hand summoning a spear of pure, holy light that stretched 100 feet long. By the grace of the Creator, you shall be purged. Michael moved. He was the personification of speed in the DxD universe, a literal streak of divine light. He thrust the spear at Naruto's heart. Naruto didn't move until the tip of the spear was an inch from his chest. Then, his eyes shifted. The gold of the sage merged with the purple of the Rinnegan. Shinra Tensei, an invisible wall of absolute force erupted from Naruto's center. The holy spear didn't just stop. It shattered into subatomic particles. Michael was caught in the repelling wave, his 12 wings snapping like dry twigs as he was launched backward across the horizon, skipping off the clouds like a stone across a pond. Michael, Azazel roared. He didn't wait. He activated his downfall dragon spear, his aura exploding in a localized storm of purple lightning and dragon fire. Alright, kid, no more playing nice. Let's see how you handle the power of a Dragon King. Azazel lunged, a flurry of strikes that could have leveled mountains. Naruto dodged each one with microscopic movements, his feet never leaving the spot where he stood. He was reading Azazel's intent before the fallen angel even knew he was going to swing. Dragon power. Huh, Naruto mused, dodging horizontal slash that took the top off a distant hill. I've got a dragon of my own. Well, close enough. Naruto caught Azazel's spear mid-swing with his bare hand. The purple lightning danced across his skin, but it didn't burn. It was absorbed. Naruto's fist pulled back, glowing with a dense, spinning vortex of blue energy. Rasengan. He slammed the orb into Azazel's gut. The Governor General didn't fly away. The attack stayed localized, the grinding force of the Rasengan tearing through Azazel's armor, through his skin, and vibrating his very DNA. Azazel coughed up a spray of blood before Naruto released the tension, sending him crashing into the wooden titan's shoulder. Sear's moved then. He knew his comrades were being systematically dismantled. He transitioned into his human-shaped power of destruction form. His very presence began to melt the wood of the titan. He was a black hole in human skin. I didn't want to use this, Sear's said, his voice distorted, sounding like two tectonic plates rubbing together. But you are an anomaly that threatens my sister and my people. For the House of Gremory, you die. Sear's vanished and reappeared behind Naruto, his hand a blade of pure annihilation. He swung. Naruto didn't dodge. He turned and caught the destruction blade with his truth-seeking staff. The two absolute powers collided, creating a sphere of void that began to swallow the air, the light, and the sound. You're strong, Red, Naruto grunted, the muscles in his arms bulging as he pushed back against the King of Devils. But your power is based on the idea that everything can be broken. My power is based on the fact that I never stop building. I am the son of a hero, the student of a legend, and the father of a new world. You're just a guy with a title. Naruto's chakra flared, turning from golden to a terrifying, boiling crimson. The cloak of the 9 tails manifested, 4 tails whipping behind him, each tail capable of flattening a country. Kurama, give me the heavy stuff. Quote, with pleasure, brat, level the whole damn plane. Naruto's physical strength tripled in a millisecond. He wrenched the staff, shattering Sear's stance, and delivered a kick to the Devil King's ribs that sent a shockwave through the atmosphere, clearing the clouds for 1,000 miles. Sear's plummeted, hitting the ground with the force of an asteroid. High above, the sky began to ripple again. 2 figures descended. One was a small girl with black hair and a dress that looked like the night sky, Ophis, the infinite dragon god. The other was a massive, red western dragon that dwarfed the mountains, Great Red, the true dragon. The 2 beings that the DxD world feared most had arrived to witness the intruder. Ophis landed on the tip of one of the wooden titan's fingers. Her eyes void of emotion. You are not in the records, she said, her voice a flat monotone. You are, infinity, from a place where, infinity, doesn't exist. You are a silence that screams. Great Red roared, a sound that cracked the very sky. Who is this mortal that smells of divine ash? Naruto looked at the 2 dragon gods. He didn't flinch. He didn't bow. He stood tall, the 9 tails chakra roaring around him like a bonfire. Finally, Naruto said, a wild, jagged grin spreading across his face. The big dogs. I was starting to think this world was all talk. You're the gods of this reality. Good. I've been looking for a challenge that doesn't break after the first 3 hits. Rias Gremory, watching from a distance within a protective barrier maintained by Akeno and a battered Issei, could only watch in horror. He's challenging the dragon gods. Alone. Is he insane? Issei gripped his chest, the D-Drag within him completely silent now. Paralyzed by the sight of Naruto standing before Ophis and Great Red. No, Issei whispered. He's not insane. He's just that much better than us. Ophis tilted her head. I want my silence back. You are too loud. She gestured, and a wave of pure nothingness rolled toward Naruto. It wasn't an attack, it was the removal of existence. Naruto slammed his hands together. 6 paths, planetary recentrican. 3 massive spheres of spiraling chakra, infused with the natural energy of the planet and the destructive force of the tailed beasts, manifested around him. He launched them. The sea, collision between infinity and creation, created a whiteout that blinded every living being on the planet for 10 full seconds. When the light faded, the wooden titan was gone. Naruto was hovering in the air, his Haori gone. His bare torso covered in glowing orange seals. He was bleeding from a dozen cuts, but his eyes were brighter than ever. Ophis had been pushed back 100 yards, her drive slightly torn, the first time she had been physically affected by anything in eons. Great Red lunged, his massive maw opening to swallow Naruto whole. Too big, Naruto yelled, his hands moving in a blur of signs. Summoning Jutsu, Gamakichi, a toad the size of a skyscraper appeared in midair, Naruto standing on its head. The toad drew a blade the size of a battleship and parried Great Red's claw. "Hey, Naruto," the toad grunted, puffing a cloud of smoke that could cover a country. "This isn't the hidden leaf. These lizards look a bit more troublesome. Just hold him for a second, Gamakichi. I'm going to end the debate." Naruto leapt from the toad's head, soaring toward Great Red's snout. He began to spin, his entire body becoming a drill of golden energy. Twin lion fists, heaven-shaking strike. He slammed his fists into the true dragon's head. The impact sent a ripple through the dimensional gap, causing earthquakes in the underworld and heaven simultaneously. Great Red, the beast that lived in the dreams of the world, was knocked out of the sky, his massive body crashing into the Pacific Ocean, creating a tsunami that threatened to swallow Japan. Naruto landed on the surface of the water. His chest heaving, he looked at Ophis, who was still hovering, and the three faction leaders, who were slowly picking themselves up. "Listen up," Naruto's voice was carried by the wind to every corner of the globe. "I didn't come here to be your king. I didn't come here to start a war. I came here because my world is gone, and I'm the only one left to tell the story. Why? Oh, you guys have been playing at being powerful for too long. You've forgotten what it's like to actually struggle. To actually bleed for something you believe in." He pointed his staff at Sirzex, Michael, and Azazel. "I'm going to stay in this town," Naruto declared. "And I'm going to teach you what real power looks like. If you want to stop me, bring everything you've got. Bring your gods, bring your devils, bring your legends. I'll break them all, because I'm Naruto Uzumaki, and I don't know how to give up." As he spoke, the seals on his body glowed with a blinding intensity. The power Tem of the DxD world didn't just break, it was rewritten. The concept of levels vanished. The hierarchy of the factions crumbled. In the distance, deep within the void, a new presence began to stir. Something older than the dragons. Something that had been waiting for a catalyst like Naruto to wake up. Naruto felt it. He turned his head toward the horizon, his Rinnegan pulsing. Finally, he whispered, "Something that smells like a real fight." End of Chapter 2. Chapter 3. The Pacific Ocean was no longer blue. Under the weight of Naruto's sheer existence and the falling carcass of Great Red, the water had turned into a boiling, pressurized soup of steam and salt. The tsunami that should have erased Japan had been frozen in midair, not by magic, but by the sheer gravitational pull of Naruto's concentrated chakra. He stood on the surface of the water, his feet barely touching the liquid, looking toward the horizon where the very sky was beginning to peel away like old wallpaper. "Something's coming," Naruto muttered. The orange pigment around his eyes deepened, bleeding into a dark, visceral crimson. "Something that makes these gods look like kids playing in a sandbox." Behind him, the leaders of the three factions, Sirzex, Azazel, and Michael, floated in a state of shattered disbelief. They were the apex predators of their reality, yet they were currently relegated to the role of spectators. Even Ophis, the infinite, had drifted down to the water's surface, her void-like eyes fixed on the terror in the sky. "The exiled ones," Ophis whispered, her voice trembling for the first time in history. "The ones who existed before the Great Will, the primordial void. You woke them, Naruto Uzumaki. Your power was the bell that rang in the basement of the universe." From the tear in the sky, a hand emerged. It wasn't made of flesh, nor light, nor darkness. It was a conceptual horror, a limb made of non-existence. Where it touched the air ceased to be. Where it touched the light died. "Is that a god?" Issei gasped, his voice cracking through the communication spell. "No," Naruto answered, his voice dropping into a register that made the ocean floor crack. "That's an ending." The entity stepped through. It stood 20 feet tall, a faceless, shifting mass of white static and black veins. It was the Void Eater, a remnant of the pre-creation era. And it wasn't alone. 3 more stepped through the rift, their presence instantly negating the magical circles of the devils. Rias and her peerage collapsed, their internal mana pools suddenly drained as if someone had pulled a plug on their souls. My power, it's gone, Rias choked out, clutching her chest. They eat, meaning, Azazel shouted, his wings shedding feathers as they turned to gray ash. They don't fight you, they just erase the fact that you exist. Naruto, get out of there. You can't hit something that isn't there. Naruto didn't run, he took a step forward. With every step, his skin began to glow with a translucent, ethereal white light. This wasn't the Nine-Tailed Shroud. This wasn't Sage Mode. This was the Baryon Mode, Finality. Kurama, Naruto said internally, his heart beating like a war drum. This is it, we burn it all. Don't hold back, brat. If we're going down, we're taking the concept of nothing with us. Naruto vanished. He didn't move at high speed, he simply arrived. He appeared in front of the lead Void Eater and delivered a punch. There was no sound. There was no shockwave. Instead, the white static of the entity's body began to turn gold. Naruto's life force was so dense, so aggressively real, that he was forced feeding existence into a creature of non-existence. The entity screamed, a sound that was actually a psyche. See erasure of the last 10 seconds of everyone's memory. But Naruto's fist stayed buried in its chest. You like eating? Naruto growled, his eyes burning with a light that blinded the sun. Eat this. Eat the memories of a boy who slept on the floor. Eat the pain of a man who lost his family. Eat the will of a world that refused to die. The entity exploded into a million shards of pure, blinding reality. The other three primordials converged on him. One lashed out with a blade of void, cutting through Naruto's shoulder. The wound didn't bleed, it simply disappeared. Naruto didn't even flinch. He grabbed the void blade with his bare hand and snapped it. Your logic says that 0 plus 0 is 0, Naruto said, his voice echoing through the minds of every living being on Earth. But I'm a shinobi. We specialize in making something out of nothing. He slammed his hands together. 6 paths. Universal creation. A tree of golden chakra erupted from the ocean, its roots reaching down into the tectonic plates. Its branches piercing the heavens. This wasn't the god tree of his world, it was a new creation, fueled by his own life force. The tree began to pulse, emitting a frequency that stabilized the magic of the devils and the light of the angels. He's restoring the world while fighting them, Michael whispered, falling to his knees. He's doing the work of the creator. But he's doing it through sheer grit. Naruto spun in midair, his Haori, now a cape of flickering golden flames, whipping behind him. He summoned 2 shadow clones, each one radiating enough power to make Sirzex look like a fledgling devil. Clones, take the flanks. Naruto ordered. The clones engaged the other 2 primordials in a brutal, cinematic display of taijutsu that defied the laws of physics. Every strike was a collision of is versus is not. The ocean beneath them was being vaporized and recreated 10,000 times a second. The lead primordial, sensing its defeat, began to swell. It started to pull the entire dimension into itself, a black hole of conceptual hunger. The 3 factions, the dragons, the city of Kuo, everything began to slide toward the event horizon of the Void Eater. It's over, Sirzex said, his face a mask of defeat. He can't stop a collapse of this scale. The universe is being retracted. Naruto looked back at the terrified faces of Rias, Issei, and the people of this world. He saw the same fear he had seen in the eyes of the villagers in Konoha years ago. He saw a world that deserved to have a tomorrow. Issei, Naruto yelled, his voice cutting through the roar of the vacuum. You want to be a king? You want to protect your girls? Then watch me. Watch what it means to carry the weight of the world. Naruto turned toward the black hole. He began to expand his own chakra, not to fight the pull, but to fill it. I am the Jinchuriki of the 9 tails, Naruto roared, his body beginning to crack under the strain of the Baryon mode. I am the 7th Hokage. I am the one who promised that no one would ever be alone again. He flew directly into the center of the void. For a heartbeat, there was a terrifying, absolute silence. Then, a flicker of orange. The black hole began to glow. Small cracks of golden light appeared on the surface of the nothingness. Naruto was inside the conceptual heart of the Void Eater, punching the very idea of an ending. Naruto, now, Kurama's voice echoed. Super Ultra Big Ball, Planetary, Rasen Shuriken, of the unyielding will. An explosion of such magnitude erupted It temporarily turned the entire planet into a star. The shockwave reached the edge of the solar system, clearing away the dimensional debris of a million years. When the light finally died down, the sky was blue. The ocean was calm. The rift was gone. Naruto was falling. He was no longer glowing. His clothes were gone, his skin was scorched, and his eyes were closed. He fell through the air like a discarded doll. His chakra levels so low they were practically non-existent. Issei didn't hesitate. He pushed his boosted gear to the breaking point. Boost, 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 explosion. He rocketed through the air, catching Naruto just before he hit the water. Issei landed on a piece of floating debris, cradling the blonde man. The three faction leaders descended, landing around them. They looked at Naruto with a mixture of awe, shame, and a new, terrifying kind of respect. Naruto's eyes fluttered open. He coughed up a bit of water and looked up at Issei. Did we win, kid? Naruto whispered, a weak smile on his face. Issei had tears streaming down his face. Yeah, you won. You absolute lunatic. You saved everything. Naruto looked at the gods and devils surrounding him. Good. Now, someone get me some ramen. And a shirt. This breeze is really cold. But as he spoke, the ground beneath them began to vibrate. Not an earthquake. A pulse. A golden light began to emanate from Naruto's chest, a mark that hadn't been there before. It was the symbol of the primordial crown. By defeating the nothing, he had accidentally inherited the everything. In the distance, the great will of the universe finally turned its gaze toward Earth. The status quo hadn't just been broken, it had been deleted. Naruto Uzumaki wasn't just a visitor anymore. He was the new center of gravity. And the real powers of the DxD multiverse, the ones who watched from the true heavens, were finally starting to get worried. This was just the warm-up, Naruto muttered before passing out in Issei's arms. End of Chapter 3. Chapter 4. The world didn't wake up to a sunrise, it woke up to a golden haze that tasted like ozone and ancient memories. Naruto lay on a medical bed within the most secure wing of the Gremory Palace in the underworld, but the bed was no longer touching the floor. It was hovering, caught in a localized field of anti-gravity generated by the mark on his chest, the primordial crown. Every time Naruto's heart beat, a golden ripple pulsed outward, passing through the walls of the palace, through the city of Lilith, and vibrating the very foundations of the underworld. His vitals aren't human, Ajuka Beelzebub muttered, his fingers flying across a holographic display that was glitching in real time. He's not recovering. He's evolving. Every cell in his body is being rewritten by the energy he absorbed from the Void Eater. He's becoming a living pillar of creation. Outside the room, the atmosphere was one of impending doom. The Great Will, the silent, sentient consciousness of the multiverse, had finally identified Naruto as a malignant tumor. Not because he was evil, but because he was too real for a reality built on fragile myths. Suddenly, the sky above the underworld split open. Not a rift, but a geometric, perfect gateway of white marble and fire. The exotic gods began to descend. These weren't the devils or the angels of the three factions. These were the conceptual guardians from the Hindu, Greek, and Norse pantheons, led by entities that made the current Satans look like street thugs. Indra, Shiva, and the true form of us, beings of pure law, descended in a chariot of suns. The anomaly must be deleted, Indra's voice rang out, a vibration that shattered every glass window in the Gremory territory. The balance of the spheres has been compromised. Hand over the Outlander, or the underworld shall be returned to the dust. Sirzex stepped onto the balcony, his jaw set. He saved us. He saved the reality you claim to protect. He saved a local branch of existence by poisoning the root, Shiva replied, his third eye beginning to glow with a heat that threatened to ignite the atmosphere. Move, devil, you are a footnote in the book we are about to burn. Inside the room, Naruto's eyes snapped open. They weren't purple or gold anymore. They were white, a terrifying, calm expanse of infinite possibility. He didn't stand up, he simply existed at a standing position. The hospital gown he wore was instantly replaced by a shimmering cloak of white chakra, adorned with 9 black Magatama symbols that burned with the heat of collapsing galaxies. Kurama, Naruto said. His voice didn't come from his throat, it echoed from the air itself. I feel them, Naruto. The big bosses. They're scared. They've saw T on their thrones for so long they've forgotten what it's like to fear a mortal. I'm not a mortal anymore, am I? No, you're the paradox. Now go out there and show them why we don't like being told what to do. Naruto walked through the wall. He didn't break it, he simply phased through the molecules. He stepped into the air above the Gremory Palace, standing directly in the path of the descending gods. "You guys are loud," Naruto said. His voice was quiet, yet it silenced the roar of Indra's chariot. "I was trying to sleep off a headache," Indra sneered, raising his Vajra. "You are the one, the stain on the tapestry. Prepare to be unmade." Indra launched a bolt of lightning that was the conceptual, first spark, of the universe. It was an attack that moved at the speed of thought, designed to erase the target's history as well as their body. Naruto didn't raise a hand. He just looked at the lightning. All creation, subjugation. The lightning bolt stopped an inch from Naruto's face. It didn't explode. It began to hum, turning from white-hot to a gentle, golden glow. Naruto reached out, took the lightning in his hand, and crushed it into a small marble of glass. "My turn," Naruto said. He appeared in the center of the divine chariot. Indra didn't even have time to blink before Naruto's palm touched his chest. Gentle fist. Internal collapse. A wave of pure, fine chakra injected itself into Indra's divine essence. It wasn't an explosion, it was a total system failure. The god of storms was blown out of his chariot, his divinity leaking out of him like steam from a broken pipe. Shiva roared, his forearms summoning weapons of cosmic destruction. "You dare strike a prime deity? I've struck things you wouldn't believe," Naruto countered, his body flickering in and out of reality. The battle that followed was beyond cinematic, it was a literal rewriting of the landscape. Naruto engaged the pantheons in a display of power scaling that broke the DxD universe's logic. He used the flying Raijin to teleport the gods' own attacks back at them. He used universal pull to drag the stars themselves into the path of Shiva's flames. Every time a god struck him, Naruto's body simply absorbed the impact, converting their divine energy into more fuel for his primordial crown. He was a perpetual motion machine of combat. "He's not just fighting them," Azazel shouted from the ground. "Watching the sky burn. He's teaching them. Look at his movements. He's showing them the flaws in their own styles." Naruto caught Zeus's master bolt, spun it like a kunai, and pinned the Greek king to the sky with his own weapon. "Is this the best the great will consent?" Naruto challenged, his white cloak billowing. "I've fought for my life since I was 12. I've been hated, hunted, and killed. You guys, you've been pampered. You've forgotten that power isn't a right, it's a responsibility." Suddenly, the pressure doubled. The great will had seen enough. The sky didn't just open. It vanished. A figure descended. It had no face, only a mask of gold. It carried a scale in one hand and a sword in the other. The arbiter of the great will. The ultimate, key of the multiverse. When the arbiter spoke, the stars shivered. "Naruto Uzumaki, you are in error. The timeline requires your absence." The arbiter swung the sword. The stroke didn't just cut through space. It cut through the concept of Naruto. For a second, everyone forgot who Naruto was. His name vanished from Rias's mind. Issei looked up and wondered why he was crying. The world began to reset. But Naruto's mark, the primordial crown, flared with a black light. "I don't care about your timeline," Naruto's voice echoed from the void. He re-manifested, his hand catching the arbiter's sword. His skin was now a deep, obsidian black, and his hair was a wild, flowing mane of white fire. "I am the hero of a world that doesn't exist anymore," Naruto roared. "I am the memory of everyone who died so I could live. You want to delete me? You'll have to delete the very idea of hope first." Naruto grabbed the arbiter's mask and shattered it. Behind the mask was nothing but a mirror, reflecting Naruto's own face. "You're just a reflection of the fear of change," Naruto whispered. He punched the mirror. The resulting shockwave didn't just shake the underworld, it sent a tremor through every dimension in the DxD multiverse. The arbiter disintegrated into golden sand. The gods retreated, their auras dimmed, their pride broken. Naruto stood alone in the sky. The golden haze began to fade, replaced by a clear, starlit night. He looked down at his hands. They were shaking. The cost of defying the great will was high. His body was starting to turn into translucent glass. "I'm running out of time. Kurama," Naruto whispered. "Yeah, we've broken the system, but the system is trying to take us with it. We've got one more move, Naruto. One more big one." Naruto looked down at the Gremory Palace. He saw Rias, Issei, and the others looking up at him. They weren't looking at a god. They were looking at a friend. "Issei," Naruto called out, his voice beginning to distort. The final piece is coming. The original creator is waking up. I can't stay for that fight, but I can give you the tools. Naruto reached into his own chest and pulled out a sphere of pure, swirling energy, the combined essence of the 9 tails, the 6 paths, and the primordial crown. He hurled it toward Issei. That's the soul of my world. Naruto yelled as his body began to dissolve into light. Use it well, Dragon Emperor, because the real war, the one for the soul of the multiverse, it starts now. With a final, blinding flash, Naruto Uzumaki vanished. But he didn't die. He had ascended beyond the reach of the Great Will. He had become the ghost in the machine. The underworld fell silent. Issei stood holding the sphere of golden energy, his boosted gear, evolving into a form that defied all previous classifications. He's gone, Rias whispered, looking at the empty sky. No, Issei said, his eyes glowing with a familiar, unyielding golden light. He just moved the battlefield. High above, in the true center of all things, a throne that had been empty since the beginning of time suddenly flickered. End of Chapter 4. Chapter 5. The void wasn't empty. It was a pressurized white silence, the Great White Room, where the blueprint of all realities was drawn. Naruto Uzumaki didn't have a body anymore. He was a manifestation of pure intent, AFL. Ickering flame of orange and gold in a sea of sterile perfection. He stood before the eye of the origin, not a god, not a person, but the living source code of the DxD multiverse. You're the one who's been writing the script, Naruto said. His voice didn't travel through air, it vibrated through the foundation of existence. The one who decided that devils must be tragic, that angels must be cold, and that humans must be weak. The eye pulsed. A figure stepped out of the light. It looked like Naruto, but it was hollow, a version of him that had never suffered, never lost, and never fought. It was the perfect prototype. Naruto Uzumaki, the source spoke, a harmony of a trillion voices. You are the ultimate anomaly. You brought struggle into a system designed for stagnation. By breaking the power scales, you have forced the multiverse to consume itself to maintain balance. Then the balance was a lie, Naruto countered. He raised a hand, and the golden energy Issei held in the world below resonated. Even from the void, Naruto was connected to his friends. A world without growth is just a fancy cage. I didn't come here to break your world. I came here to set it on fire so something real could grow from the ashes. Quote, the perfect prototype lunged. It didn't use jutsu, it manipulated the laws of physics. It tried to delete the concept of friction, to make Naruto slide into infinity. It tried to remove the strong nuclear force from Naruto's atoms to make him drift apart as dust. But Naruto wasn't playing by the rules of this reality. I am a shinobi, Naruto roared, his form flickering into the 6 paths, Baryon Genesis. We thrive in the gaps between the rules. Naruto struck back with a punch that carried the weight of the Koto Amatsukami, a mental invasion of the source itself. He didn't want to kill the origin, he wanted to give it a soul. He wanted to force the Great Will to feel the loneliness of the orphan, the heat of the ramen bowl, and the weight of a promise kept. In the world below, the sky over the underworld, heaven, and earth merged into one. Issei, empowered by Naruto's gift, stood at the head of a unified army. Devils, angels, and fallen stood side by side, their auras resonating in a single, massive frequency. D-Drag, let's go, Issei screamed. One last boost, for the man who showed us the way. Partner, this is beyond divine. We are boosting the heartbeat of the universe. The energy from the 3 factions surged upward, a pillar of multicolored light that pierced the void and slammed into Naruto's back. Naruto felt the surge. He felt Rias's hope, Akino's loyalty, and Issei's fire. He looked at the perfect prototype and smiled. It was the smile of a man who had finally finished his mission. Kurama, Naruto whispered, one last time, the biggest one yet. Let's give him a finale they'll never forget, Naruto. Naruto's form expanded. He became a golden titan that eclipsed the eye of the origin. He reached out with 1,000 arms, not of wood, but of pure, distilled will. Ultimate sage art. Multiversal Rasen gutter. He didn't throw a ball of energy. He threw the concept of choice. The collision shattered the white room. The sterile perfection of the origin cracked like a mirror. For a single, eternal moment, every being in existence saw the truth, that the gods were only as powerful as the faith of the mortals. And that the mortals were capable of becoming more than the gods. The eye of the origin blinked. And for the first time, it felt fear. Then, it felt curiosity. And finally, it felt peace. The light exploded. When the dust settled, the world was normal. Or as normal as a world with devils and dragons could be. The underworld was being rebuilt, but not with magical circles, with hammers and nails. The angels were walking the streets of Kuo, not as guardians, but as tourists. The power systems were still there, but they were fluid. A low-class devil could now become a super devil through sheer hard work. Just as a human could transcend their mortality. The ceiling of the world had been removed. Rias Gremory stood on the roof of the new occult research club, looking at the sunset. Beside her, Issei looked at his hand. The boosted gear was gone, replaced by a simple, glowing tattoo of a whirlpool on his palm. He's really gone this time, isn't he? Rias asked, her voice soft. He's everywhere, Issei answered, looking at the sky. He's the reason the wind feels warmer. He's the reason we can choose our own path. He didn't just break the power system, Rias. He gave it to us. Deep in the dimensional gap, a small, orange-clad figure sat on a floating rock, slurping from a bowl of ethereal ramen. Beside him, a massive fox with 9 tails lay curled up, its breathing a rhythmic, peaceful thunder. Naruto Uzumaki looked out at the infinite expanse of the multiverse. He saw new worlds forming, new legends beginning, and a trillion souls finally breathing for themselves. Not a bad ending, Kurama, Naruto said, wiping his mouth with his sleeve. It's a beginning, you idiot. Now finish your noodles. There's a disturbance 3 sectors over that looks like it needs a hero. Naruto grinned, his blue eyes sparkling with a familiar, mischievous light. He stood up, adjusted his forehead protector, now bearing the symbol of the unified world, and vanished in a flash of yellow light. The God Slayer was gone. The teacher had arrived. End of chapter 5. In a world ruled by rankings, bloodlines, and sacred gears, Naruto became the glitch no system could contain. Devils feared him, angels watched in silence, gods questioned their throne, and this was only the beginning. If you want part 2 or more Naruto crossover what ifs, like the video, subscribe, and comment your next idea.